Hiding anymore.
Good evening, welcome to the Planning Board for Tuesday, April 18th. We stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Tom Young, Chairman.
Joe Blanchette, alternate.
Michael Proto, clerk.
David Samuel, member.
Tyler Perrin, member.
Kimberly Queenan, member.
Steve Perry, Selectman Rep.
And absent this evening is Matt Shoemaker. Open up for public input. Seeing none. Please take notice that in accordance with New Hampshire RSA 675-7, the Litchfield Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, April 18th, 2017 at 7 p.m. in the Town Hall Meeting Room, 2 Liberty Way, to consider adopting the following updated Litchfield Master Plan chapters. The Executive Summary, Chapter 1, Vision, Chapter 2, Population, and Chapter 8, Land Use. Dave, would you like to explain basically what we're doing with these?
Certainly. So the planning board has gone about a process over the course of the last year or so, taking up changes to the master plan in these chapters, which have been identified by you, Mr. Chairman. The goal of which is to update them in accordance with New Hampshire state law and with the desires and wishes of the people of Litchfield. The approach that has been taken to the update of these chapters has been to review the chapters themselves, make recommendations as to how they can be changed. Jen has made some modifications to those chapters, brought those back to the planning board. The planning board has in turn reviewed them, made recommendations for changing them again. Jen has then gone back, changed them. The planning board has then again reviewed them and iterated in this manner several different times for each of the chapters, making changes both large and small across the board. At a certain point recently, we came to an agreement that these were ready to present to this meeting in accordance with the requirements to present them to the board, to the people of Litchfield. At this point, I believe that they're ready for review and adoption.
This time we take any input from the public, seeing there is none. This time I'll close the public hearing and we'll proceed with our deliberations. Can I get somebody to present the matter for consideration?
I'll make a motion that we accept the changes to the executive summary, to the master plan 2017 executive summary, chapter 1 vision, goals and implementation, chapter 2 population and housing, and finally chapter 8 land use as presented to the planning board.
Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
It'd be 6-0-0. I didn't put him as a red voting member.
Yeah. I was gonna say.
Sorry.
It's all good.
So I will remove the draft date and put the adopted date on each of these, and get them over to Joan and John for updating on the planning board's website. And that's it.
That was painless.
And I was worried about having copies.
Okay, Jen, community design.
Ah. Well, I'm actually going to turn it over to all of you. So to start, where's Matt? Speaking of community design.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure he's watching.
He didn't do his homework either. We'll throw him under the bus since he's not here. So at a couple meetings ago, when we first started talking about what's next in the master plan process, there was interest in exploring a community design chapter. But before we could really get started, the general sentiment was that we needed to understand what we can do with a community design chapter, what our goals and objectives are for this document, and just to kind of get some foundation to start from. So in order to do that, everyone agreed to do a little bit of homework and look for examples of communities that have established plans and policies to promote the preservation of community character, design, and agriculture while still growing. So good examples of how this balance was achieved in other locations. And use that as a starting point for the conversation. So everyone diligently looked up some examples, sent them over to me. I've posted them to the Google site on the community design page. Point out a couple other things. Kim had some really great questions that she drafted and posed as she was doing her homework that I thought might be useful and beneficial as we go through this process and look at the different case studies. And so it was, just some of those critical thinking questions that help us go beyond, oh, this is a fun example, this is a pretty place, to what is truly meaningful and will yield the desired results, or yield results, or is it too specific to that location and not transferable? So just some thoughts there that I put up there. The other piece that we were talking about at the prior meeting was visual preference surveys. How can you survey based upon very visual questions? And so I pulled a few examples of different visual preference surveys that we've done in the past, just so you can get an idea of how those work. And you can use that as a tool to kind of get some input of what that character is that residents in Litchfield see as defining character in your community. And then I'll also Kim's been doing some additional research on the demolition review process that she mentioned before, and so she's sent me her notes, her research notes, that I've posted here as well. So that's my overview. I figured we can either put each of the examples up on the Jumbotron, or we can look at them on our own computers. I know they're not all of them are necessarily legible on the large screen because they are written documents. They're not all visual. So whatever works for you, but I was now going to kick it to each of you to walk through your case study that you shared with the group. And Joan's not here, so Tom's up first. Do you want me to put these on the large screen or no?
Yeah. Oh.
Go to the first link there, the Small Towns, Big Ideas, the case studies.
Yeah, I looked through in North Carolina, and some of the places down there, they just have a different way of looking at things than we do up here. They're a lot more rural, and I think some of the ideas are very good. Some won't work up here, but the concepts will work. The other one I had was, locally was Newburyport, which is, over the last few years, been redoing all of their land area down there. And they did a very good job. They've been doing it for a few years, and they've actually come up with conservation land, agricultural land, new downtown park areas. It looks like a very good plan that they've got going, and I can't wait to see it be fulfilled. I'm familiar with a lot of the areas they're doing down there, and from what it was before and what it is now, it's very different. But they went through commercial, industrial, environmental. They went through their zoning boards and their legal people to make sure everything was right. The third one that I put up there was from the New Hampshire Town and Country, which is the municipal association. And it's basically just a format, if you look at it, to go through and what you're trying to accomplish and how to do it. They give you a good step-by-step background in it. And that's the ones I have.
Which one was your third one, Tom? I'm sorry.
The third one was the,
Healthier communities in New Hampshire?
yes. Yeah, that was taken out of the newest copy of the Town and Country magazine.
I think a lot of the points that were made in this one tie directly into some of the other things that I saw in a couple of the examples. The Oceanside piece and the Apple Hill piece both.
Can you explain them a little more?
Oh, sure. Well, let's start out with Oceanside because the Oceanside piece that I found was a direct agritourism strategic plan, and they specifically went about it in a very, very, what I would term, organized manner. They defined agritourism for themselves, what it meant to them, both socially and economically. They actually used a case study of Apple Hill, which was my second posting, as a case study that they used for a comparative community. But then they also went on to look at the elements of agritourism that they were interested in, what the experience meant, what Oceanside had to offer to tie into that, and what they were looking to do with it. They did something that I thought was again, a very organized approach to it, which was to do a functional SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats analysis. And then they set up their own strategic goal and what their vision for it would be. I thought it was really well put together. I think that from my perspective, the Apple Hill piece offered a functional how-to a little bit more than this piece did. And the Apple Hill piece was, let me switch over to it real quick here. Apologies. The Apple Hill piece was a much more studious example of what it was that we were after, which was it was actually a thesis done by a student, and it was for a Master of Science degree in the College of Agricultural, Food, and Environmental Sciences at San Luis Obispo. And they used Apple Hill as the core example to this. And what the thesis went into a number of different things. One of them was the involvement of women in the community. But the core theme to pulling together the idea of agritourism seemed to me to be more along the lines of bringing together an organization of the business of farming and the community. And by the community, I mean both town leaders and the community themselves, in order to develop a agritourism approach. There was a, can't remember the name of it, I apologize, it's been a while since I reviewed the article, but there was an organization of the Apple Hill Growers Association. So Apple Hill is actually a locale that is close to where I used to live. And people go up there once or twice a year to pick apples and Christmas trees and pumpkin patches and that sort of thing. And it was a very agrarian economy, very, very agrarian economy. And 2 or 3 times a year, particularly on opening day, you go to Apple Hill and there is a tremendous amount of traffic, and it's all very well organized by the people of Apple Hill, but there's still traffic jams. There's now wineries in Apple Hill, but it's developed over the course of a dozen years in order to get to that level of agritourism. But people go up there and they pick their apples, they do pumpkin patches, they do the Christmas trees, but all of that is started out with the Apple Hill Growers Association and a partnership with the community. And I think that was the central thrust from my perspective. It touched on a number of different areas of interest for us, but I thought that from a educational perspective, it was taken in a very different context than some of the other articles that I read. So there you have it. Very different approach to looking at tourism, agritourism.
Kyle, you want to explain yours?
So this is Buffalo, Wisconsin. And I think it's, when you compare, the Midwest with Litchfield, it's kind of, and I think the Midwest is obviously, farming is a much greater percentage of their, what they do out there here, but their vision was to try to maintain like 90% of the farmland that existed in 2002 and have the same amount by 2020. And it looks like from town government to consolidation of some of the small family farms. Also the contiguous areas of woodlands, wetlands, and other natural areas also have been permanently protected from development. So I think between those 3 things there, their vision is with those things to help keep the farmland there. But that's got to be a big part of the economy there too, and I don't think that necessarily Litchfield's got, the economy of Litchfield is you know, people like the agricultural feel of Litchfield, but, is it really a big part of the economy here? That's the question I got.
What I found interesting in that was the hunters and fishermen purchasing or leasing farmland to have access for hunting and fishing. Kim, would you like to?
Sure. I was just kind of laughing when Jen did her introduction. If you page down and you can see my thoughts and considerations. I thought that was going to be between us. That's okay. So I made a look at my face. I was talking with Tom earlier when we were in the research phase, and I kept coming across articles that I thought might have been specific to a region or a cute little company, but it would really sustain a town. That's why I was asking the questions that are at the bottom here. So I don't know if I went off course trying to answer the homework assignment, but I tried to find a more strategy approach, not trying to find, little cute bunny, rabbit farm.
I thought your thought process was helpful.
Okay, I was surprised to see it there. That's all. All right, I found two, and they have some differences, but then I look at some of the similarities as well. The first one is Hamilton, Massachusetts. They try to balance agricultural and economic development in their master plans. They actually go out of their way, if you can click on the article and I'll show you where to go to explain what agriculture means to them. You can look it up if you want. It's like on the 4th page. It's a really whole area. It's not just a 1 or 2 sentence kind of thing. But if you click on it, you'll see it there. They ask themselves hard questions about their town of whether agriculture is really a big piece of it or not, and they had to come to some conclusions about it. They wanted to maintain that, but also move forward with more modern jobs as well. So let's see, if we, can you guys click into it, and I'm going to look at the recommendations section on 2, 7, and 8.
2, 7, 8?
Yeah, 2, 7, and 8. If you click on the, I think it's the 5th page. There's a different number on these than it is. Are they numbered 45, 46,
Yeah.
47? Okay, then go to page for the recommendations. Let me find it. 51. I thought 2 was interesting, more to just upset Matt, who's not here, about accessory dwelling units. Although it did bring up a good point that they wanted to put them into commercial buildings if they could, up on the different floors. So again, we were talking about them inside existing homes, but they're saying maybe we can also put them into commercial businesses as well. Number 7, amend the home occupation bylaws by defining classes of home-based businesses in terms of their potential effect on the areas. Basically what they're trying to say here is Hamilton is located in a nice place in Massachusetts so they can get to any job that they want to go to, but most of the community wants to work from home. Litchfield takes 2 hours to get to a job you don't want, so you would also want to work from home. So both articles were focusing on telecommuting. All right, let's see what number 8 was. I thought this was interesting. Their recommendation was mixed-use development overlay district. Basically, what they're doing to balance this is they might have a farm. There's a picture of it here, right next to a commercial building, right next to a house. It's not just, it's for families, single families over here. This is the business area. They're merging them all together. That's a decision they decided to make. Okay. And their logic was that they are saving the farms that way as they get smaller. Okay, so the second one, the other thing they also did, well, we'll get into the small one. Let's go into this one here, the second one about keeping small towns alive. This was farming towns, basically, that are having their youth leaving, and how do we keep them here? We're all facing the brain drain issue in New Hampshire, not just Litchfield. Litchfield's different where we are next to some more urban areas that the youth can go to. So what they're saying is, again, stress the commuting of work. bring different companies in. Don't just bring in the same type of companies. Have a diverse, different set of companies that the different people, not just youth, would be attracted to. Like heavy scientific research companies. You know, you could have a biotech, whatever. But again, if you don't have the interconnectivity, we're going to have a problem because we really need the strength, right? So that's one there. But basically, they're saying keep the farms. Don't rely just on the farms. Bring in a diverse type of companies, not just a manufacturing plant or whatever. Try to get that. And then to keep your youth, you have to say, why are the youth leaving to go to Manchester or Boston? If it's something non-work related, like restaurants, whatever, try to bring that here to the town as well to keep them here. And they also had a nice list here. Let's see, I said, I'm almost done here. Yeah, to bring the youth into more like planning board or leadership positions and entrepreneurship. So both of them, were, again, coming down on the internet connection. You talked about getting some free connection. You know, you had mentioned a few months back. But we need the strength because I at my son's school, the internet's strong enough to just get by, but you can't sell Litchfield that your internet will just get by. If you got, you know, you have to really. I don't know what we have for contracts with whoever we have for providers, but maybe strengthen it that way or something. So that's where I stand with that. That was my research.
So one of the findings in this is having a regional policy can help. Jen, is there a regional policy?
There is a comprehensive regional plan. Does it have
Is there an agritourism kind of piece in there anywhere?
explicitly no?
Okay.
Can I chime in for a second? I have to ask the question to Jen first. Do we know now, right now, is there something going on in the legislature discussing agritourism? Only reason I asked that question is because
Yeah.
I did some research and I found a case, Forster versus Town of Henniker,
Oh, goodness gracious, yes.
that was 2015, which defined what agriculture is.
Correct.
And basically what the Supreme Court of New Hampshire was to decide was whether agritourism is included in the definition of agriculture,
Correct.
which is RSA 2134A, and whether that agritourism is an accessory use to a permitted agricultural use. And basically the Supreme Court of New
Correct.
Hampshire said the agritourism is not included in the definition of agriculture under that statute.
Correct.
So I guess my question is, has there been discussion after this case, I guess, from the legislature point of view, that's focusing on this, and how would we incorporate that into, I guess, our land use?
Yes. Okay, let me scroll. So I know last year in 2016, it was considered. I'm trying to see if it. Yes, so there was Senate Bill 345, sponsored by Senator Booten in 2016, was passed relative to the definition of agritourism. I know that there was quite a bit that went into that piece. A lot of compromise between like municipal association, planning community, and farming community to come up with something that worked for everyone, kind of, sort of. One of those compromises where not everyone is, no one's 100% satisfied. So what was done is agritourism is inserted in RSA, it remains in, RSA 267 2. And additionally, the definition of agritourism, which is RSA 267-1, does now mention and reference agritourism within the definition. Oh, that is the definition of agritourism. so that was, sorry, I was thinking, I thought though for some, it went into the agriculture piece. Nonetheless, so the definition was kind of ratcheted in. So instead of reading the marketing or selling of at wholesale or retail on-site and off-site where permitted by local regulations of any products on the farm, it's now expanded, it's explicitly defined. And this is in response to that Henniker case. To be the on-site and off-site where not prohibited by local regulations, marketing includes agritourism, which means attracting visitors to a farm to attend events and activities that are accessory uses to the primary farm operation, including but not limited to eating a meal, making overnight stays, enjoyment of the farm environment, education about farm operations, or active involvement in the activity of the farm. I'm trying to remember if there was something in here. Trying to remember if there was something that there was a piece in here that still clarified that the agritourism piece, the accessory piece, would still be subject to plan review, but I'm not seeing that explicitly stated here. And I remember when this is in the process of being drafted, seeing like multiple iterations. So I may be recalling a prior draft that wasn't the final cut. Now, I think there was also something in this year as well. Let's see if I can pull that up.
I seem to recall something you sent out about it.
It's possible. This is thinking about loading. Interesting. Not sure why it's not loading.
Was that the case where they were trying to do like wedding parties or
Yes.
something?
Yes, that is the case. So I can say to the Henniker case, I believe the court upheld the planning board's decision. And what the issue was is that the road leading up to the farm was narrow, unpaved, inadequate, and didn't have a significant shoulder. And there was not ample parking provided on site, in which was resulting in parking queuing up the road, which had impacts to the abutters. And so there wasn't enough kind of thought put into the site layout to accommodate the weddings on the site without impacting the abutters. And so in that regard, the planning board had issued, I believe, a cease and desist to the farm. And it was, I think from the planning board's perspective, it was certainly not an issue of wanting to discourage the agritourism or the weddings on the farm. It was ensuring that it was done in a suitable and, you know, the operations were suitable to the location.
I think the Supreme Court basically went by the letter of the statute, basically, what the statutory intent was as to the definition of agriculture. And I think they basically found that agritourism wasn't part of that definition.
Right. And so that's now there, but
So I guess to my mind, there's an open question, given the fact that we've seen examples of municipalities defining agritourism for themselves, and that is, given this Supreme Court decision and given RSA 267, are we in a position where we can, should, or have to define agritourism? Or is it something that's already well enough defined by the letter of the law that we can utilize that as a basis for the conversation?
yes. Sorry, I'm
Either
searching.
or, yes.
How's that? Sorry, I'm trying to search and see what there is this year for agritourism bills. And spreadsheet is not overly friendly. Okay, so we just have the one. And it's, the hyperlink's not working, so I have to pull it up separately. So my understanding is, well, we have a definition in statute. The understanding was that there wasn't going to be an, kind of that infringement on the local ability to regulate. Okay, so wait, we got agritourism. So agritourism as defined in RSA 2134A is undertaken by farmers to contribute to both the economic viability and long-term sustainability of the primary agricultural activities of New Hampshire farms. Agricultural activities and agritourism shall not be unreasonably limited by use of municipal planning and zoning powers or by unreasonable interpretation of such powers. So there is that piece that is in there. This is in the bill that was passed last session. Let me see if I can pull up the one that's in there this year.
But wasn't the primary use of the farm was not for weddings, right?
That was a
Correct.
Christmas tree
Isn't that
farm,
why
wasn't
they
it?
Yeah, it
said-
was a Christmas tree farm.
Yeah.
SB 169 is the current one. Okay, Senate Bill 169 has been re-referred, which means it's just kind of trapped in committee. It's not going anywhere this year.
And what was?
That's I'm pulling it up. It was regarding the definition of agritourism. It totally eliminated all the well, let's see. Oh, interesting. Okay, so it pulled it out of the line under the definition of agritourism that was marketing, creates a separate line. Ooh, and it included a line that said no local government shall make a regulation otherwise defining or restricting agritourism.
Wow.
Oh dear.
I think that answers your question.
Like I said, this one has been re-referred.
Well, what it says is right now it's stuck in committee,
Yes,
so it's not
No,
law.
it's not.
Right, but
dead.
It's dead.
It's the polite way of,
Tabling something
Yep.
permanently. Okay.
yeah, yeah, where are we in the legislative cycle? In the biennium, or are we the first, I should keep track. We're the first year or the second year of the biennium here?
We live to either
Takers?
of those things.
So, we elect our reps, they serve a 2-year term, right? Year one, they can propose something. If it gets killed in year one, they can't bring it back in year two. That's if it's flat out killed. But if it's re-referred or tabled or retained in committee, then they can bring it back up in year two and further consider it. Just in terms of that. That's where it's good to, when it's re-referred, if something's re-referred or retained in year two, that's definitively, it's dead. But it's the polite way of killing it without actually killing it. Yeah. So, our little schoolhouse rocks. I'm a Bill. Education moment.
Thank you.
There you go.
But we still don't know where we are in that cycle.
No,
so
we
know.
don't. We don't know if it's coming back next year, and I should know. I don't off the top of my head. Probably find out.
how does one find out?
I cheat and I go back to this OEP website and see if they still track legislation on their website, because they used to track it by biennium. But I don't know if they still do that.
So your point in bringing this up was
Well, I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
that the definition that if we're going to be doing something that deals with agritourism, and there was a definition of agriculture that was amended in 2007, and then this case came down in 2015, which basically defined what that is, and whether agritourism was included in that definition, and the court said it wasn't. And my question to Jen was, after this decision came down, was there anything in the legislature that was going to change that?
And there was last year.
And there
That
was last year, so,
Yes.
and I
Senate
guess
Bill
we'll
345.
wait and see, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if OEP had something that
So we may or may
specifically
not be
addressed
able
that
to
in
define
implementation.
it at all,
Oh, for the goodness.
So,
depending on whether or not this is
I
there.
guess the question is regardless of whether or not this is a dead bill or only a semi-dead bill, is there anything that restricts us from defining agritourism at our level? And
Okay.
it sounds to me like there may be some intent at the state level
To
to
restrict that.
restrict municipalities from applying their own definition to agritourism. But stating in a bill that you shall not do this doesn't mean that if you have already done it, it wouldn't hold from a legal perspective. I don't know.
Let's do this.
Interesting.
I'm gonna put a link.
The only thing with that is because this is a land use board, and I'm just doing the more generalistic formality. We're a land use board, but we, unlike Massachusetts, which has sort of home rule, New Hampshire is creatures of the state. We are creatures of the state, technically. So we follow the state law. So,
It's like-
I mean,
What happened with telecommunications, where my dad decided to remove a segment of that just to comply with what the state said? Are we gonna have to remove all this stuff after we define it, if they make a law about it anyways?
That holds true for anything that we do.
But yeah, but with it being currently proposed, I don't know.
It may be dead.
Yeah, so we don't know. We don't know. If
And
it's
it-
dead, then we
And
can.
even if it's even,
by all
even if it's
means.
not dead, it doesn't mean that it wouldn't be open for public comment. And frankly, I think that
Yeah.
having a community level decision as to what agritourism means for each community is not necessarily a bad thing. Just my own opinion.
Yeah.
Accidentally closed a bill. I did not want to close. Oh, history, bring it back. Come on.
I guess depending how the law gets shaped and, if they do pass it or whatever, and it becomes law, how that's gonna be defined, I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's, that could change. I don't know.
But there's no existing definition as far as we know.
There is for agritourism. Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on. If I can get this back. Okay. Bill text. Okay. It would help if I read the section of the statute that was being amended to you instead of the chapter law section. So I read you the bill section, not which section of the statute was being amended. So it was RSA 2134A, which is the definition of agriculture that was amended last year. So the definition of agriculture was amended to include agritourism as a part of that definition.
Okay.
So that stands today. And that is what is in place today. Let's put the piece that's been re-referred aside. I'm reading it and thinking about the political chances. I think the line that says municipalities have no ability to regulate will likely kill that piece, regardless of the different parties in legislature. Knowing the negotiation process that went into drafting the piece of legislation that was approved last year, the voices around the table to maintain some municipal control were very strong. So I think that side of it would limit its potential, regardless of where we are in the 2-year biennium, which I should know and just don't off the top of my head. So we're going to 10 to the-
We're all gonna hold this one against you.
I know. Once upon a time, I used to keep track of that. I've gotten a little rusty, apparently. I just put OEP's agritourism resources at the top of your community design page. So if you refresh your page, that link will show up at the top. That includes, it's actually fairly up to date. There's a couple pieces that summarize and discuss the impacts and implications of Senate Bill 345 from last year. There's also a link to the definition of farm, agriculture, and farming, which includes the new definition of agritourism. There's a few other resources in there. I will say that the law lecture number 2, local regulation of agriculture from fall of 2015, that was presented by Amy Manzelli and Margaret Burns. While it predates the last year's bill, it does a really fantastic job of outlining what a municipality can and can't do as it pertains to agriculture and agritourism, and it specifically addresses the Henniker case.
I'm sorry, where on the page is that? Because this page is very informational.
Yes, refresh your community design page in your Google site.
Already to the energy and planning site.
Okay, so if you're on OEP's page, there's the agritourism section. Let's see, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th bullet.
Agritourism planning for farmers?
Next one down.
Ah,
I wasn't counting the sub bullet.
my bad.
That's okay.
Law
Definitions.
lecture 2.
Yes.
Okay.
That one has a really good overview. And it looks like Law Lecture 1 last year may have covered 345, because that would have been the fall of 2016. Yes, so and seeing it in the description, it did address it. So I will see if I can get my hands on that one. They're not linking to it. I'm not sure how they have the
I think
link
the
to that
town,
one from
we have it
2015.
on our website, I believe.
Do we?
Well,
But I had,
The other one's not linked either. It's
I had
like
all
the
three of them.
purchase version.
the actual
Okay.
page is actually the next bullet, if that's what you're looking for.
Yes, it is. The decision is.
Mhm.
There's more on this page. If you scroll up and scroll down, I just gave you the kind of the bookmark to the agritourism section on the page.
Laura, do you remember uploading those? The packets I gave you from the law lecture?
They might have just gone to a specific meeting date.
Yeah.
I can look.
So taking a step back for just a moment, we've kind of fallen into this agritourism conversation. But we've fallen into this agritourism conversation in the context of a community development section of the master plan. I'm sorry, but I haven't followed along with this as accurately as I could have. How did we get down this path of having the agritourism conversation? Was it simply because we felt strongly that agritourism as part of the community plan needed to be one of the first things addressed, or
Well,
how did we end up here?
let's ask Michael, he's the one who brought it up.
Well, I think the discussion, if I can recall, I'm going back, was this whole notion that, we have an agricultural sort of industry in Litchfield. And I think, taking advantage of those opportunities, whether it be, in terms of, promoting, selling products, restaurants, food, and different things like that. And I think that's where the sort of the discussion came in, to try to, because in terms of the character of Litchfield, in terms of its agricultural character, But I mean, I'm sure there was other offsets of it as well. I mean, but that's what I can recall. I mean, it sort of built into that conversation, sort of, and it probably didn't come out as necessarily as agritourism, but I think that was sort of the idea, or the basis of the idea, to try to develop something along those lines.
Based on that survey, remember the town voted on what they thought, and this was a high ranking. This is one section of the community design.
Right.
It's not gonna.
What I'm trying to do is trying to take a larger context and perhaps even think through how we approach the community design, because we've gone down a path of, okay, we're going to discuss agritourism, but agritourism is a component of a larger community design conversation. And I'm wondering if it benefits us to be working on more than one aspect of this at a time. Perhaps, I know we've discussed previously smaller work groups, where 2 or 3 of us are working on a particular component of something. And I'm just thinking that we make more progress at this if we're working in smaller teams and we're bringing larger pieces back to the group. And we've spent a good part of an hour on agritourism, and I'm a believer in it. I like it, but I'm also thinking our mission here is to accomplish a community design chapter. And if all we're going to do is focus on one narrower component of it, it's going to take us forever to get through this. And I wanted to have a little talk about perhaps how we can address this and move it along quickly, as opposed to focusing in on one thing.
So I think, like, get an overview of all the topics we're going to cover and then split them out into groups afterwards.
I like that idea.
Yeah. Get bullets that we want to accomplish, as opposed to going down one path at a time.
I love it.
Yep,
Yeah.
sounds like a plan.
Okay. Could I propose, Mr. Chairman, the idea that perhaps a group of us come up, a subgroup of us, not a quorum, come up with some ideas about what those bullet points are and present them at our next meeting, where at that point we could suggest what is it we're interested in and solicit participation in those interests.
So why don't you see if you can get 1 or 2 others to work with you and do that?
I will absolutely do that.
That'll keep us under the quorum.
Absolutely.
So to clarify, the point of this is to do some research behind the scenes to bring it back to the board for discussion and review, so that there's no deliberations or decision-making that's happening outside of the public forum, but it just enables you to work with a partner on doing some of that research.
As long as it's under a quorum.
Exactly.
Strictly fact finding.
And the initial step is to bring back a list of potential topics so people can decide what they're interested in. That's step 1. That's what I'm signing up for. Kind of organizing that.
So looking at, like, perhaps the examples, the case studies that we already got, and then taking common bullet points that we notice, and then bringing that back, or things that we think would be good for Litchfield itself.
Absolutely, and I think
Bring that
running
back.
it through Jen and her experts as well would be a good idea before we get back to our meeting,
Yeah, that's fine.
so as to augment it when we miss things.
That sounds like a fantastic idea.
All right.
Can I say
You
something?
should know, you came up with it.
You may say so.
All right, so if that's step 1, let's always keep in mind step 5, 6, or 7,
Absolutely.
which is gonna be implementation.
Yes.
Because you can come up with anything you want. And unless you own the land, or own the rights, or own the power of the people, it won't go anywhere.
Right. Well, that's all.
And that is what happens in this town. Because the people that own it don't want it, or the people that can do it won't.
I think.
So limit how crazy you might want to make this, because I've gone down this road a few times and seen nothing come of it.
I think that's where the kind of examples come into play really well here, is that you can see what other towns were able to implement and then take from their example and then just kind of build out a roadmap and then work on the implementation as we go. So once you define all the pieces that you want to implement, you can take all the time you want implementing each one of those pieces or cancel implementation as you go.
Let's just say as a group, we wanted to build a racetrack. If nobody that owns enough land to build a racetrack wants to build one, it's not going to happen.
Exactly, but that's
So
why
you can come up with anything you want and think it's as genius of an idea as possible.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Well, absolutely. That's why we're coming up with a bunch of ideas that we want to kind of put in a list and saying, these are things that we'd like to see in this document here. And then as we go through them, if we discover, well, there's no way this is going to happen, right? 5 of these bullet points are just never going to happen. So we just
Steve, the racetrack is out.
exactly so, racetrack not going to happen. Then we pull them out.
Basically,
But right
what
now,
I'm saying is you
yeah.
want agritourism.
Yeah. Well, that's why we didn't want to go down
want
that road too far.
But it really needs to be a very small piece of the puzzle.
Yes.
It can't be just that. It can't be just this. It can't be one or two things that you just think you want this community to be,
Yeah.
because you can't limit it to that stuff.
So that to kind of follow on that, I think we want to focus on things that are policy level considerations that can be used to drive or at least frame town level decision making. And that might include your land use regulations or your zoning ordinances. I think your list at this point, you're thinking really high level of just those topics that consider in community design, right? So so it's almost trying to figure out what topics define community design to then further elaborate on. So, agriculture and agritourism is one piece of it, but one of the things I heard in the case study discussion was that we need to actually look at to what degree agriculture contributes to our local economy. So what share of our local economy? So we're looking at those pieces of who we are, both in how they feel, which is the subjective side, and then also the more quantifiable side. And so we can pull in some of the data. So we could pull in, employment sector data or business sector data that would quantify where we got the most jobs or the most income within our community. So there's things like that we can use to further define those pieces. So that means that it's not just the agriculture piece, but it's also the economics piece. You also, I think, to attempt to speak for Matt, I think part of it is also the community aesthetic and what we look like as a community. So that visual aspect of how we define character from the built environment perspective, but also the unbuilt or the green infrastructure perspective. So there's those different topic areas that that I think you're thinking that high level for that initial outline.
I completely agree with you, and one of the things that you stated, I also completely agree with, but I want to point out.
Yeah.
And that is who we are. I'm speculating here, but in a community design chapter, we're not only defining who we are, we're defining who we want to become as a community. And one of the things that you pointed out, Kim, was the fact that, okay, we have an internet consideration, for example, and we have referencing previous meetings. We also have a community build-out consideration. We have a lot of considerations which we have to fold into who we want to become, and knowing that the world is changing around us, even as we sit here. So I think that it's not just who we are today, but who we want to become tomorrow. And I believe that is going to take not just the planning board, but it's going to take the entire community to help us decide that, and we'll probably work on that with the input of the community and with what we know historically the community wants.
Yep.
So.
That Hamilton, Mass article did some of that, and introducing it to the boards and getting into some of the policy. But it did ask the hard questions. What are we today? What are we post-1980 internet?
Yeah.
And where we're going? And spreading the risk, not just the farmland, but diverse businesses, not just.
But we
single-
also have to realize this is what we can do, not what we will do.
Right.
It's the things that can be done.
Yeah, wanting to become something doesn't mean we're going to
Right.
become something.
Right.
Right.
And I agree with all this thematically.
Yeah. So the next step is once you kind of identify what you wish to be as a community in the future, then you, from the implementation side of what's within your wheelhouse and your realm of authority, is then you say, will our land use regulations allow this? Or are there barriers within our land use regulations to achieving this vision? Or are there things here that will send us in a direction we don't wish to go? But using that as a guiding document, again, as a policy guide for how to frame local regulation and decision making.
I don't know. Sorry, question. I don't know the politics in Litchfield well enough, so I'm going to ask the obvious question: how would the other committees and the selectmen choose to participate? How would we engage them?
I would say,
I'm sorry, I didn't think everyone would look right at you.
Of course, everyone's going to Steve.
I'm gonna say very limited.
Okay.
It just seems to happen that way.
Okay.
You'll get a lot more from conservation usually because there's a little bit more interest in the land and it's a little more similar. But like zoning could just say, we're just here to regulate. They don't want anything to do with the process beforehand, you know?
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean, I don't typically see a ton of cross melding.
That doesn't mean you can't invite them.
I was going to say, is that something that we could encourage through some process of visiting with conservation or with zoning or with the selectmen or with whomever? Mosquito abatement.
We can ask any of them to come and sit down at our meeting to discuss it at any time.
You can do that, or you can request to be put on their agenda as an appointment and go and visit them on on their meeting night, or invite them to attend your meetings. Either way.
Would that be an acceptable approach to people if we tried to get on their agenda and just suggest that we're starting this community development chapter, and if they care to participate in some of the planning process, we'd like to take names.
You can ask all you want.
I was thinking that as I was saying it, that asking is one thing, getting is another. Okay.
Telling you, always remember the racetrack.
There's a story there. We'll talk later.
I'm telling you, it happens all the time. We try to meld this community into what we think we want to see. And it either is going to restrict the growth, it's going to increase the tax base, or it's just not going to be wanted. Those are the three things that stop everything. That's why I say the racetrack. Nobody really wants a racetrack. They're big, they're huge, they're noisy. Tons of traffic. Look at Loudon.
Look at Salem, how long we had them to get rid of theirs.
When we did the zoning map, we did a huge survey, we went to, different events, and we got people's ideas on different things. And a lot of the survey information was pretty valuable information, because a lot of people basically, provided information from town of what they wanted or what they saw. I don't know if you want to use that as a base to which to, or do another survey or something, maybe to focus in on this particular issue. But, it did
Yeah.
help to.
I'd say take the old surveys, use it as a starting reference point, and then do something that follows up and narrows in.
A good thing you may want to look into, Salem, New Hampshire. You familiar with the Tuscan Kitchen?
Yes.
They bought the racetrack. They're putting in a new market basket, a hotel,
Yeah.
housing, 4 restaurants, and they're in discussion now of putting a hospital in.
Hasn't happened yet.
Hmm?
It hasn't happened yet.
He's very much on his way to it.
Wow.
He's got the knowledge and the backing behind him right
A
now.
lot of development.
But it's that's something that, because Salem's a different league than we are,
Mm-hmm.
very much commercial.
Right.
But it's just interesting that somebody could come in and do all that. He's got a place that's been open 3 years, and he's moving it.
Wow.
He'll rebuild it in a new location.
Because he didn't build it right the first time.
He does have that section of the parking lot that's just gravel.
You see the bank they just put in?
No,
Right in the middle area? Not where the gravel is, but the other section?
no, I haven't
front
been
of the
there
test
in
kitchen.
probably 6 months.
For another Tuscan Kitchen. They got a brand new bank going in.
Wow.
They need a place to put all their money.
Yeah. He's got the money.
Where are we?
So I will solicit people to participate in creating a list of topics that we can present to the planning board at our next meeting, and then once we've solidified that list, we'll present it to Jen to see whether or not she has anything that she would think we need to add to that list, and we can add it to the agenda for our next meeting.
Then go from there.
Awesome.
Focusing on what topics define community design at a high level. Sorry, a bit of a rabbit hole there, huh?
And since I started all this, I probably end it by saying I did do a little bit of homework on agritourism. Massachusetts did a study in their economic development strategy for agritourism, which they defined it and they provided examples of different farms and things and so forth. I'll give this to Jen, and if you want to look at it and do something with it, then that's,
Is it online?
It is online. I actually downloaded it, so you may be able to find it
Okay,
online. So, yeah.
sounds good.
Moving on, Jen.
All right. Do you want to do the demolition?
Sure, are you up for that? Or? You got the audience.
Yeah, slide.
There's a hard copy, so I'm gonna. You three can share that one. I think a
Actually
picture's
have a
of
copy.
that. Oh, you need a copy, yeah.
No, I have one.
There you go. And if you do, those three can just share it, it's just the picture I want them to look at.
It just got posted like that. Two-sided.
There you go.
I think
Oh, you
we're
need one? Okay.
missing one more, that's all. It only stopped at me. So,
Yeah, you, just to share that one. I just
Okay,
wanted, I just wanted to
sorry.
go to the picture of the notice,
I
that's
didn't
all.
think
Are there any extra hard copies over there?
oh, yeah, sorry.
This something.
And the hard drive,
These
they're
are-
online.
Right.
Oh, good for you.
Posted.
I did feel
So you
that
can
you
send
were-
that down.
Slides.
to
Oh,
someone.
this had color. All right.
Oh, you did have enough down there. I
I
thought
didn't
they
know
were
if you
sharing.
needed them. Okay.
Oh, okay. We're good.
So, talking about having subcommittees branching off and doing research on their own, I started to look into the existing process of what Litchfield does for demolition. I'm still in the inquiry phase. This could change many times before we finalize anything that we want to bring up. You're looking at draft version 1. I met with Jen and Joan McKibben. We reviewed some demolition processes in other New Hampshire towns, primarily Concord and Exeter. I also met with Jen to ensure that I wasn't putting this process in jeopardy by having a meeting outside of the planning board, so I just wanted to make sure I knew the rules before we went further. I had the okay with Jen to start going out and talking with some people on this process. This flow chart here on page 1 was looking at what other towns have done. I tried to make a sort of a common denominator, you know, what people were doing. If we can change this if you would like at any time. What other towns are doing is a demolition application will come in, or it'll be listed on a site plan application that something has to come down a structure. So on the top left of the flow chart, it would go to the building inspector and code enforcement officer, which is currently the same person in this town. At that point, again, this is what other towns are doing. They would, if the building inspector deemed the building unsafe, it would go right down and they would be approved to demolish the building. Okay? If it's not unsafe, the other towns had a historic or historical commission. They've all called it different things. They would be set up in a town. It's not the historical society. I'll get into that in a moment on page 2. Other towns have said on the historic commission that if a building is over 500 square feet, greater than or equal to 50 years old, and is historically significant, and you can have whatever attributes you want to define that a building should maybe not be, you know, set for demolition. So in our case here in Litchfield, if the size fails, it can come down. If it's, you know, less than 50, it's not considered historical yet. But is it historically significant might be something we would look at. If it is not historically significant, again, it can come down. There's a lot of old buildings in town that aren't, you know, historically significant. If it is, you know, it meets the criteria, whatever we set it to be, the owner is notified. Well, I guess you have a few days to tell them what's significant or not, historically significant. All right, so if it is, the owners are notified. A sign that I'm showing you that I said to share is put out in front of the property to tell the public that, I think you have the, do you have that pay there? That it's noticed, the building is noticed it's going to be, have a demolition, and it says there's going to be a town meeting, the date and the time. So that's drivers going by, they see this on the lawn, that this building has been, you know, somebody's requested to try to remove it. Okay, again, some of the towns are saying it's 28 days. Again, you know, Litchfield can work with the number of days here, whatever the process wants to be. Then you're going to have the meeting of whatever you said the state was. The public's going to voice their concern. Or alternatives may be discussed at that time. They want to just use this as the meeting would be to, one, voice the concerns, but maybe educate the owner that maybe there is something significant on the property. Might change their mind. Maybe it lines up people to buy the building. Other buyers might want to buy it. They might discuss reusing the building. Don't tear it down. Maybe add on to it. Maybe convert it to accessory dwelling units. I had to throw it in. or move the building. The state has funding from talking to other members in town to maybe move buildings. But anyway, come up with alternates if we can. If there are no alternates found, you can ask the owner if we can come in and take photos. And if they say no, you don't. Otherwise, you take the photos and then it comes down. If alternates are found and the owner agrees to the alternatives, it just can't be some commission says they're okay, the owner also has to agree, then go apply whatever they are. So what we're trying to do here is have a minimal footprint, if you look over at the left, not to interfere with any sale of a property. That was a concern that this group had had, right? This doesn't say you can't paint your house a certain color, this doesn't say you can't sell your house, it's only when you try to get a permit to demolish the building. Want to adhere to the same timeline. So even though the historic, even though our building inspector might have 2 days to get it over to the Historic Commission, and the Historic Commission maybe will turn it around in 3 days to tell the owner whether it's good, again, we can work with the numbers. We want that timeline on the right here to maybe be the same as the time frame it is today, not be a year. We want to try to work within the boundaries of today. And not interfere with current person's roles. We don't want to tell the building inspector, we don't want to get in the way of what they do today, what the Board of Selectmen do today, or any of the owners of the property. So page 2, I did reach out to the Litchfield Historical Society to talk about a historical commission in town. They were very receptive. Jen, we spoke about that and thought that a lot would want to be on the Historic Commission, and they did. So I was surprised. I thought there would be contention. They were all for it. The Litchfield Historical Society is not a town department, it's a non-binding. So even if you use them as a person here instead of a commission, it wouldn't, there's no legal entity or, for their opinion. But if you had a commission, it would be. If you were going to be setting up a historic commission, it would probably follow the same 5 to 7 member thing that we do here, kind of thing. Board of Selectmen probably has to be voter approved. You'd have to go through that whole process. Litchfield Historic members could or would be part of the commission, and other people in town. There would be an advisory role only. It would have, you could pull them into the planning board, to the conservation boards, or any other boards in town. Initial startup costs would probably, we think maybe a few days of training. But it still would fall under Board of Selectmen, might have to have a representative. So I did meet with Jen and Joan, like I said. I met with the Litchfield Historical Society. I'll be meeting with the building inspector, code enforcer. He wanted a 2-week out lead time before I met with him, other obligations there. I received some feedback from the Board of Selectmen, from before. I wanted to see if we could work on the Chapter 7 master plan as we were working with our community design, because I thought they would go together well, but that's a decision for the group here. So that's, again, this is what some towns in New Hampshire are doing that I thought would probably fit with Litchfield's politics. But mainly, if I'm a person who owns a property and I'm going down the flow chart here that, okay, it is historical significant, but the owner always has the choice whether to, they have to probably go through this process to get it on record, but they always have the choice to either not take the alternatives, don't let them in for the pictures, they can still demolish it. They just have to follow this process here to maybe change their mind or get another buyer or something like that. That's all I have at the moment. So.
I'm just surprised 50 years. That doesn't seem very old.
Oh, and these attributes,
It's
whatever they want to do, you can make them 100 here. This is just a guideline.
Doesn't it seem, we're talking like 1967 right now.
Yeah. In the documents you keep referring to, if it's historic or not, you have the National Register, the State Register, and this 30-year survey. It came out back in 1988. I brought it. These are the pictures of what this survey deemed were historic at the time. And some of these houses I don't remember, even see anymore. The Historical Society went through and said, gone, 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 gone. So it's scary. Take a look. So the document's referring to this in some of our planning board documents.
And Joan scanned that, and I can get it posted for you guys to review. It's actually fun.
So, and these buildings are, some were 50 at the time, now 80, but,
Yeah, so there's 50 years, but then there's also the historically significant.
Yeah, it's
So
an
something from
and.
1967 may not necessarily be historically significant, but as we start getting beyond then, you think, okay, you got mid-century modern, and there are some good, I don't know
There's some
necessarily.
beautiful splits out there that we gotta save.
Right, so there are some things, again, that might not be historically significant. But, it doesn't mean that, well, yeah, we'll leave it there.
So, can I ask a question about page one?
You mean the flow chart? Yeah.
Is it, according to, I understand this is proposed and this is kind of how others do it, but is it incumbent upon the building inspector or the code enforcement officer to understand whether or not something is potentially historically significant, because it has to come to the attention of the historic commission that something is being considered for demolition at all in order to trigger the process?
They have, again, we can not do 2 days, but that code enforcement person has 2 days to either say it's unsafe, it's coming down, or hand it over to this commission, and they're gonna tell you whether it is significant or not. They're the ones making the decision whether they get 3-day turnaround time.
Right, but what the way you just described it to me means everything goes through that process.
Everything that's more
that
than
meets
50
this-
or more
this
years
criteria.
older
Right,
and
but
more than so many square.
Then that becomes the purview of the code enforcement officer to know that.
He just has to know that it's 50 years old and more than 500 square feet, which is easy to know because that data is in the assessing record. So that would be an easy thing for a building inspector to know. It's the historically significant piece that's more subjective, and so you want people that have that architectural history perspective and background to be part of whatever that body is that's reviewing. And so they might look at it and go, that's great, it's 50 years old, but it's not significant. It's within a matter of days, it's out of the demolition review process, and gets its permit and not delayed.
But we would potentially propose that someone does delay the permitting process based upon review by the historical commission.
Correct.
That's the pause right there.
Yes.
And if it's on the National Historic Register, we know. If it's on the state one, we know. If it's in the survey, it's already marked whether it was that way or not. Granted, it's 30 years old now, so we
Right.
add another 30 years to what you're seeing here. But so that commission would use these tools as part of it, or the historical society people, if they're on it, would also know other stories behind it, behind the structure. We didn't get into tax paid or non-tax paid, but it might be the same process. So again, this is our first step in the inquiry phase. It's nothing final here. Want to make sure it passes a lot of things you just said about do they want it? Are we throwing up any roadblocks to the public? We're trying to minimize that. Illegal sale, we couldn't get in the way of that. You brought that up. And open to suggestions as well.
I think one of the things that we talked about was that, and this is Kim's final bullet on page 2 there, is pairing this inquiry with an update to the historic resources chapter. So this might be something where, working incremental steps. Education is always best to moving things forward. So, the first step might be just to do that master plan update and put it out there as a recommendation and then go from there. So there's, it's not necessarily move it forward today or tomorrow. You guys just call or work through the historic resources chapter. So you have options.
It's not overnight. We'd have to get this past Board of Selectmen and the voters for that commission, right?
Right.
Get that populated. And then the voters will determine. I did like this sign, that was the picture of 1,000 words, because we were always wondering how to broadcast it to the public, you know,
Yeah.
with the newspaper or whatever. This was nice. So next steps here, what do you recommend?
Like that?
I guess it depends on what,
Give them a chance to digest what you're reading? Did you see, to see if you wanted to take this to the next step, or, I'm not sure where I stand with this at this point.
What's the proposed next step?
Do you think this is worth going forward with? Do you want to take time to think it over?
I'm gonna step back and be a selectman here.
Yep.
And I'm gonna say, if you as a community member feel that this is important to you, you should take it forward whether this board wants to or not.
Your conflict of interest.
Well, not really. And then if you would want this board to follow behind you, but if they don't, you still have the right to proceed on your own. Okay? Me, now, as the selectman sitting on the planning board, I think it's a great idea. Do I think it's perfect? Do I think that the timelines and everything are perfect? No. Do I think it's a good idea? Yes.
I
Yeah,
agree.
that can fluctuate, the attributes here can fluctuate in the criteria.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea.
I would
as well.
just be very mindful of not impeding
Right.
on an owner of a property.
That's
That's
why we're
all.
saying if
If
they
it's-
see the picture and flow down that chart.
If it's a couple of
you're okay,
weeks and the
you're good.
process today takes, if the process today takes 2 weeks and the new process takes a month, I don't think that's really impeding. I think it's worth trying.
I agree.
all right, so with that thought out there's a couple ways to get to that end result. First step is you need a body that can review the demolition review permits. And so the traditional structure for that is a heritage commission. So the first step would be to put something forward to establish a heritage commission. And then the second piece of it is the drafting and development of an ordinance. Those are the two pieces that ultimately, to get to the final step, would need to be put before the voters, the town meeting. So how you kind of approach that, you could take a phased or an incremental approach, or you could just like go for everything all at once. So one is the question of, you do have some reference in the other chapters that we just adopted at the beginning of tonight's meeting, that would give you that basis in the master plan to move forward without updating the historic resources chapter. That said, if you went and updated the historic resources chapter first, it give you the opportunity to kind of do a query and look at what those historic structures are in your community. That again would be used as a basis for demolition review moving forward. So there's a couple things there, and just give it like another document that could be used. So there's that. You could do the historic resources chapter first and then move forward with things. You could do the proposal to create the Heritage Commission while you're working on that master plan piece, and do it and then wait a year and then present the demolition review ordinance. The potential hiccup when we were sitting there talking about how you can do this is what happens if you put something before the voters and they adopt the ordinance but not the Heritage Commission, if you put the two out there simultaneously. And so that would, so that's the only...
And wouldn't the Heritage Commission want to be advising on the development of the ordinance?
Most likely. That could be. So, yeah, so there's it's not something that you can do.
The Heritage Commission is to change the ordinance.
Right. So there's a chair, they can't actually, you write the ordinances, you put them before the voters as the planning board. They're advisory. They would advise you in the drafting of it, if that were the case. Yeah, so there's a couple, just basic procedural considerations for what you want to tackle first, and how incremental you want to be versus how compressed time schedule you want to be. But it does, because the annual town meeting cycle only gives you one shot at things a year, it does lengthen that time frame needed to accomplish something like this.
So I would propose that forming the historic commission is probably a great first step, and then the ordinance, it just feels like that makes more sense to me. The thing that I would add to Steve's list of things to be wary of is if there's a cost associated with formation of the Heritage Commission, I would be wary of that, because that will have to go in front of the voters as well as part of that, and you're going to want to know what the costs associated with that are as you're developing this, because you'll be asked the question.
Oh, yeah. Insurance from them, yeah.
Well, I mean, Jen's time and that sort of thing. I don't know if in an advisory capacity you have to have someone of Jen's ilk to participate or not, but there undoubtedly would be costs even for building space.
Was there an agricultural committee set up,
Commission.
a commission that went through, but then nobody,
Oh yeah, Joe was
decided
gonna
to
look
be on
that
the
up.
board?
I actually
follow that?
believe it was approved by the voters, and the committee has yet to be formed with viable members.
So we can follow whatever process they did
Yeah.
to get to, which I'll have to dig up, I'm not sure what that.
And I only suggest that not to slow you down, because I believe that they would want to participate in advising us as to what any such ordinance might look like.
Well, the costs that she's talking about are basically the same costs we incur. Would you go to the OEP meeting or something like that? Which are,
But my thought process is, are they gonna hold their meetings here? If so, there's
Yep.
costs associated with holding meetings here.
Not really. No. Building's already paid for.
Yeah, but the lights and the heat, and if you have to put it out on,
They're getting paid for.
okay.
The question is, are they gonna have a budget? Are they gonna be able to spend money? I don't know. I mean, I'm just,
well, does the
Yeah, for
Conservation
training.
Commission?
well, the Conservation
Training and
Commission
public
does,
notices.
But, I mean, we have a budget, but, planning board has a budget, so I don't know
Yeah.
how that.
I would just be aware of it and plan that into the process of developing the plan.
Now, what I
The
did
commission.
not do is tell you what heritage commissions do. There's statute in like 2 or 3 paragraphs of what they do, Again, mostly advisory, but just so you know what the responsibilities of them are.
Do we, oh, well, maybe this is too much, this is a question maybe we'll have to figure out, but, obviously the demolition process is one part of this. But are there other things that the commission does, I guess? Do they have other,
There were like 3 bullets, right?
obligations or something?
Yeah, the primary ones, they serve as an advisory board that's there as a resource to the other boards and commissions in town. So if the planning board had something that had a historical component, they would be there to consult with the planning board. Same with like the zoning board, if they had a variance application or special exception application and wanted that resource. They'd be there for the selectmen if the selectmen had a question on a historic resource in the community. So that's their primary function. Also, another kind of piece of it is their meetings tend to be more fluid and as needed. So not necessarily like planning board or conservation or the selectmen that have a set meeting schedule, but their schedule might be more in response to when demolition permit requests are filed. And so they just need to have, I think it was 24 hours to post that notice of meeting.
I would envision them having more
So-
like quarterly meetings or something,
Most
just
likely.
to see if they need to update something, or.
Yeah.
I think you hit the head of the nail when you were talking about the demolition though. Is that you wanna make certain that people feel comfortable in developing the commission, that you're not trying to impose rules and regulations, because that was very frowned upon at one point in time when it was asked.
And I guess the Historical Society has said they're all for this?
Oh, they're all for this. And if there's no historic district where you're saying what you can paint, what you can, there's none of it. It's just when this permit.
Make sure that you
Yes.
stipulate that
Right.
very clear.
Yes.
Heritage
I will,
Because
Commission.
that will help a lot.
Right, I need to understand, like I think Dave brought up, understanding not the politics of the town, but the people's attitudes of the town on how to present this.
Who wants to be told what they can do with
Oh,
their own
nobody.
property,
Exactly,
right?
absolutely.
Sweet.
But we still have to get the building inspectors, make sure he's okay
Yeah.
with the flow of this, and then, put something else in it.
Kevin will love it.
We'll see. Just so you know, the information that you had given me on the current process pretty much was here, but it was people making phone calls and all that, so this just makes it more, a process.
Good luck.
Yeah, it's, I was joking, I don't want to be a fossil when this is over. We'll see what happens.
Did you guys also want to look at the historic resources chapter? Since not much changes in the historic resource universe, it's not a huge lift in terms of an update for a chapter. It might mean adding a few locations, which I'm sure the Historical Society could assist with.
I was just gonna say, maybe have, if we have a meeting or something, maybe have them come in, or someone representing them come in and basically go through the chapter and basically say, hey, listen, if we're looking at this,
Yeah.
what's your opinion?
They have already offered to do that, we wanted to see if you wanted to take it to the next level.
Well, I would also say that perhaps it's deferred until such time as we understand what the timeline for the Historic Commission is, because it might be something that we do in partnership with that group, because we might end up
That's
in
a good
another
point.
situation where we update it and then
That's a very good point.
the Historic Commission wants to weigh in and change it again immediately.
Heritage.
Heritage.
My apologies.
Yeah, they call them different
The
things.
Heritage Commission.
So we're gonna call it Heritage Commission in Litchfield?
To align with the align with the statutory definitions of who does what, it'd be heritage, because you have a historic district committee or a heritage commission with two different sets of rules and responsibilities under state statute.
Interesting.
Okay.
Again, going back to that whole we're not a home rule state explanation from earlier.
Right.
Escrow account. Do you have the papers there, Donna,
What?
for the escrow?
I didn't even know nothing about this meeting.
No?
Just push it
I'll
off.
push that off till the next meeting. Minutes for March 21st.
Can I ask a question on that? I agreed with what was there, but we had to time that after the election, right? Was there any special wording about that? We had to wait for the election to have happened. I didn't know if we needed wording in there about that. Everything in there I agree with, I just didn't know if you wanted to.
Do we say what time the meeting convened? Well, that would actually need to be corrected because we did not convene at 7 p.m.
Right.
No, it was
We
7:30.
had the vote that day.
Adjourn at 8 p.m.
I would say as long as you correct the time the meeting was called to order,
Yes.
so that'd be in two locations.
For the minutes? How do we go from 500 to 501 on a vote?
You were sworn in, right? Who was sworn in?
Well, we went from 501, and then my dad left, and then we went 500, I
He's
guess.
still technically a
But he was still
member.
technically a member, so
Yeah,
does
no,
he count as an
there's
abstain?
Two abstentions.
Okay.
Abstentions.
shouldn't that be reflected in? So we would have 501, 501, 501 instead
Right,
of
no,
501,
because-
500.
No, the second one would not be
No,
because Matt wasn't here to abstain.
that wasn't here.
Are you referring to the motion to nominate Tyler as a full member?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And technically speaking, Tyler should have abstained because he was a voting member at the time.
Right, so
Yeah.
would it be 501?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not if he didn't want to. He can vote.
It's true.
And-
Right, but I think he abstained.
Yeah,
I'm pretty
It
sure
just
it
would
was.
have been advisable to abstain.
So it should read 501, 501, 501.
Yeah.
Okay. Just thought that was strange. Other than that, it's good.
So I'd like to make a motion that we accept the meeting minutes with the change in start time and the change in votes. As we've outlined here, 501, 501, 501 with a 7:30 start time.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Any comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
I'm gonna abstain for fun.
501.
I wasn't there. And I didn't read them.
Yeah, you were sitting down.
If I read them, I would have voted.
2 items for other business.
Do you want to bring up about the conference? I think Joan sent out something on it.
I have no idea if Joan sent out something on the conference.
You know, the,
Saturday?
yeah.
Yes.
What was
The
what was-
OEP conference, I don't
Yeah.
know if the registration deadline is closed. It may have.
I could, it's this Saturday, okay. I was thinking it was next
No.
Saturday.
It's next Saturday.
29th, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So registration should still be,
Yeah.
I'm speaking, I should
Registration
know the
deadline
date.
21st.
You could be ahead of yourself.
Yeah, there is the annual OEP Planning and Zoning Conference, the last Saturday of April. We'll go with that for the date. I think the registration is still open.
Till the 21st.
Huh?
Yeah, so till Friday.
It's open till Friday.
Yeah.
I don't know for certain because I don't do you guys' budget. There may be some dollars in the budget.
$55 per person.
Huh? Yeah, it's not a huge registration fee, but I think there might be some dollars in your budget to
think we have
cover
enough for
registration expenses.
If you wanna go.
So give Joan a call.
People wanna go, they should go.
Yeah.
You should. Yeah, it's a fantastic conference. I'm not saying that because I'm speaking. I'm saying that because it really is a fantastic conference.
That'd be good for you.
They have a full range of sessions and topics. Starting with this year, they're doing something new, and that's what I'm helping with. It's an immersion 101 for new board members. It's just a, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Piece that just really just kind of gives you an introduction to the who, what, when, where, why, how. Oh my God, where do I find more information? So there's from that really fundamental all the way through, like Ben Frost does. Every year, an update of planning and zoning legislation and court cases, and it's always a great review of what's changed in the past year. There'll be more advanced topics. I think this year there's some items on floodplain regulation, a few other different things out there as well that are kind of topics du jour as well for like more advanced things. So it's the only conference that's entirely devoted to planning board and zoning board members, not the staff, the members, the volunteers, which is why it's held on a Saturday. So yeah, great resource if you're interested. Give Joan a call, or maybe Troy, or bug Steve. He can help you.
Sign up.
And just sign up, register.
It is very, I've done it
It's-
twice.
Yeah.
It is very interesting.
Yeah. So there's that. then okay, I had a couple things just under other business that they are on the Google site. I just wanted to give you a heads up. So the first one, I put it under agenda items. It really wasn't an agenda item though. MS4 permit. So I've sent to Troy and Joan, and I think it's gone to Jack Pinciaro. It's gone to Tom and Kim. Is at NRPC, we're chatting with the other 4 RPCs that have communities affected by the MS4 permit to figure out what we can collaboratively offer to municipalities as services to help you comply with those permit requirements. All we're doing right now is just a little triage. We kind of went through and identified like 12 different service areas where we can be of assistance. What we're trying to do between our offices is not reinvent the wheel. So I did the survey and a fact sheet. And the survey, I'm not just running for our region, I'm running it for all 5 regions that are affected. Rockingham has developed this really fantastic guide that's a roadmap to compliance that walks towns through all the permit requirements and kind of walks you through a process of identifying how to comply with each step. And so I fully plan to take their work. I'll give them credit for it, but things like that. So we're trying to identify ways where we can share rather than, do the work 5 times over. And then beyond that, figure out how between each of the towns can share products. Because it's a federal permit requirement. There's quite a bit that will be transferable and reproducible from town to town of those that are regulated in New Hampshire. So I put that general information up there along with the kind of the list of a PDF file of what those service offerings might be and the survey. And again, we're just trying to triage right now just to see where there's interest. One, it'll help us frame one-on-one conversations with each of the municipalities. And then 2, it'll help us kind of structure what those are and where we can maximize cost savings for towns. So that's stay tuned. But also putting it on the radar so you can bug your staff in the office, to respond and get us a survey response.
Are you really saying it's gonna be between 500 and 1,500 per municipality?
For which? There's all different things in there. Each thing's got like a rough cost of what it might be if we cost share.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's more than one.
Well, there's a bunch of different things in there. Yeah. Don't be silly. We can't do the whole thing for that.
Hey,
Nobody can.
Second one says no additional.
Because there are some things that we can absorb under due. So like, for example, we can keep track of who's doing what and just post that as a resource on our website. I mean, that costs us, we maintain our website on a daily basis as it is. And that's not no additional cost to us to do things like that. Okay, the other item that's on the Google site, this is just an FYI. This is for your next meeting, May 2nd. You will have a hearing to consider accepting an application, a new application. This is one application for 3 approvals. So it is a lot line adjustment, a site plan application, and a sign application. They're all tied together. The site plan doesn't go if they don't have the lot line adjustment. So they're all tied together, fit part and parcel. So what we're going to do is we're going to review the 3 pieces simultaneously. So when you accept the application, you'll need to, if you deem it complete, you'll need to acknowledge that there are 3 things they're applying for in that application. And then when it gets to the final end of the process, you have 3 separate things that you are reviewing and approving. So 3 separate motions at the end, plus waiver requests as those kind of filter out. So I've got just the basic information. I've got all the files that we have received to date from the application are posted. And there are hard copies here at the town hall, so I just wanted to have them out there so that you have a chance to start reviewing those, so that when we get here, in 2 weeks, everyone's ready to go.
So earlier today, as I was reading through this particular documentation,
Yes.
it appears as though some of those links were broken. So,
You know, you mean the links on the top of the page?
to the additional documents.
Yeah, they're just the things that are posted below. Sometimes the Google site does funky things, where if I just all I do is I go and I copy the file name from the bottom and I paste it up above.
Okay.
And sometimes it'll open them, sometimes it won't. Just look for the file with that name at the down at the bottom in the
Yeah, I
in the
copied
file
them all
directory.
up and saved them anyway, so.
Okay. Yeah, it just references the file name. View it as that, ignore the hyperlink, but the document's there. So. Yeah, Google does weird things, I don't know.
Does anyone have anything else?
I
And
will
that,
move that we adjourn.
yeah. Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor? Opposed, abstained? Passes 6-0-0. And we will see you